Hey guys, welcome back to Mom's favorite podcast. It's Kira.
Hey, it's Puce.
Today we're going to talk about conflict, but the first thing I want to talk about, we went to the mall together.
Yes,
And
we did.
we got to explore some of the really cool stuffies, which is 99% of the things that we were looking at.
Yeah.
Actually.
How can you not? They're so cute.
I know.
I was into it,
Yeah.
but I couldn't deliver my full, I was pretty overstimulated by the mall because I hadn't been to a
Fair.
mall in like a decade. And so I had to keep my eyes, horse
the prize.
blinders on. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't been to the mall in like quite some time since like Forever 21 went down.
See, I think I didn't really do it very much as a teen.
Did you guys have malls?
Well, okay.
Is there a mall?
There was a mall that was like really close by to where I lived, but it was basically abandoned. It was like basically only running
There's, like,
because
the
it was a movie
right?
theater.
Yeah, right? Am I
what?
making that up? There's
A
like
QT, yes, right outside of it. So that's been abandoned like forever. There was like one Applebee's inside and a half-functioning arcade, and every once in a while we had to do a middle school band concert in the middle of
I went there.
absolutely derelict food court. I don't know if they added more stuff in, but it just amazed me, like when you went back, but it just amazed me that it was open at all, period.
Yeah.
And so there was like that mall, but then any of the malls that were like worth going to that were still inside the perimeter, where it's like it's got a fountain in the middle and it's like 4 stories or whatever, and we had to ride like into downtown. So I only got dragged there a couple times, and it was because my friends were like having a bougie like Victoria's Secret moment. They needed somebody to come, and I was the non-threatening gay, I guess. I don't know what the whole point of that was, but I liked riding MARTA, and I was always down. That was probably the biggest allure. Now imagine me as like the most awkward 12-year-old you've ever seen in a cummerbund playing in the middle of the food court while my father played my Nintendo DS 8
a foot
picnic tables back, like as far in the back of the space that he possibly could.
Yikes.
Which, to be fair,
I want to be rude,
middle school band is probably like the worst thing you could have to listen to. Like, I don't know. That's just an affront. And also in a dimly lit bunk ass mall that is like echoey.
The place is like if a wind chime was made out of bones.
I don't remember if the mall ever was like a fully functioning mall. I think it was just always kind of decrepit. Usually we had to enter through the back like dumpster hallway that you would just spit you right to the AMC.
Yikes.
But we all knew that. And it was just like the movie theater. So we all did
the dumpster
that.
area. Right.
Yeah.
That's how you get into the movie theater.
You have to get into some weird suburb or like close to Stone Mountain to get just like a classic movie theater.
Stone Mountain.
Yikes. You mean our lump?
What a cool place.
Stone Mountain is covered in really cool lichen. Interesting, weird little
and not
mossy growths and stuff. So it's fun to look at as a kid. And it's a pretty gentle hike because it's just a lump.
It is very gentle.
It's just extremely eroded granite, so it's like completely smooth.
Mount Rushmore for the KKK.
They did do that to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's beautiful land around the back. Where it's like people love biking there and like you can hike around the back. And I went on like science field trips because of all the cool growth on the rocks and stuff like that.
It's a beautiful place.
If it's 4th of July or any shit like that, then you're seeing some crazy, racist, patriotic, like light show over, the one of the most insulting carvings that they
could
images that
imagine.
They could put into a mountain. It's just the fact that it's a mountain too. It's deeply offensive. That poor thing.
Yeah,
great bike trails
Mountain.
though.
Yeah,
last I heard, I believe the attendance had been dropping so much, the news was like, what's going on? And it's like, I think you guys know what's going on.
We're not feeling the KKK thing.
Everyone's really kind of pissed about homages to racism and
we don't like
colonialism, especially when carved into a beautiful natural mound. Yeah, like it's a natural formation that it'll never go back. You defaced it.
Yeah. Big time.
People aren't feeling that, or the sculptures commemorating horrible people.
Simply not.
So
simply not.
Not surprising that the light show attendance may go down.
I would not go. But
I'm amazed that so many people went for so long, but I think that it's one of those, you just kind of have like a ignorant Atlanta tradition. Yeah. And honestly, I think it's kind of hard to see the offensive carving when you're like accessing the park for other activities.
Cool place.
And the whole light show, one more thing. They're
Hear
playing the devil come down to Georgia or whatever.
Oh, fuck, that's so
shit
bad.
like that the whole time.
That's
Over
maybe
and over and over again.
the worst thing
And
I've
drunk
ever
white
heard.
people are just there being like, oh my God.
Amazing.
I do remember being a child and wondering why that was fun. The 1 or 2 times that I got dragged there and being like, hey, theoretically, like a young child like that would be susceptible to it, but it still pissed me off.
Look, the devil went down to Georgia when they go,
Yeah.
I'm like, that's foreboding.
Very
that's
much.
sinister. I know better.
Well, we like that.
As a
little bit.
child, you're like, no, that's a big spooky song. I don't like that song they're doing.
I think genuinely the patriotism made me pissed off. I was pretty like evolved, but I was just like, you're doing a lot here. I think you're doing a little too much. You've played this song several times. I like it more than Cotton Eye Joe or whatever. That one gives me the skeevies. But like, I don't know why you're playing it this many times. And it sounds like we're just having a big old Georgia party. And I'm a child, so I don't know why we're supposed to care about it that much. You know,
Yeah.
like I just didn't get what was so cool about it. And so I was squinting at everyone was enjoying themselves.
I know they're knee slapping too.
Absolutely.
They got the
Look,
spoons
isn't
out.
that cool? Are you listening? Look, isn't that cool? And I'm like, no.
I don't like that.
And I'm like, and now they're not even going to let me tell them that I'm annoyed because they're so into it.
Somebody brings the spoons out, you know it's over.
Dog, I don't think I actually really saw that in events like
No?
that, but I do
Maybe
have
that's-
dreams of becoming a spoon guy, so...
But you should.
Oh.
I would pay big buco dollars to see you fucking
think-
slam some spoons.
In Atlanta, definitely never saw spoon playing unless
Okay,
it
maybe
was at
that's
like
like
a
an
specific
Arkansas,
folk event.
Kansas,
you know, like,
Missouri situation.
well, it could also be more Appalachia. It's just like Atlanta is beneath that. But Appalachia is pretty rockin'. We may have to get into this. Because I'm like, that's a lot of my ancestry roots. And I'm like, they get a bad rap, but it's
true.
pretty dope,
No,
actually.
it's so true.
I'm
well,
like-
because then you get those like weird fucking like families of 18 where they all just like might be related.
Right.
And those really sour the bunch.
Well, see, there's a lot of those pretty close to, or at least a lot of situations pretty close to that, I think, within my ancestry.
Okay, but you're
But-
not blue, so that's good.
Blue.
You don't know about the Whitaker family?
Oh my God. Well, I'm not saying that there's cross or like inbreeding.
Inbreeding is what
But
I'm alluding to.
It's just weird, silly, goofy things where it's like my great grandma had 7 husbands that no one knew about till she died.
That's queen shit.
8 children, only 2 of them were related beyond being half siblings. And some of them were as old as 65 before they found this out.
It was a lot easier to keep secrets back
It's
then.
also like they were like really cool people. Like, yeah, they're fucking weird because they're a little bit of a product of their environment, but they were like radical, protective, anti-racist, I've learned in a lot of ways.
Hell
like
yeah.
really cool at like reclaiming their rights and being anti-system. Yeah, they're hillbillies and like whatever. They could be rednecks. Hickey is a family name in my tree. Also Whitehead. Like,
Oh,
it's
I
just
like
a
that.
lot.
I like that. Wait, actually,
Well, it's giving
Hickey kind of slaps. I'm not gonna lie.
Dog, in an alternate universe, my name could potentially be like middle name Hickey, last name Whitehead. Like there's just
That's sex.
some ways that could have turned out. To me, Whitehead is giving acne,
little bit.
obviously.
Right, yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
a lot less of like a family lineage name, and it's more like that's the palest bitch in this place.
Hickey
Gosh.
is such a slamming name, though.
Really?
Hickey, I'm fucking with it. I'm not gonna lie.
But then could I ever have a Hickey in my life?
no
Exactly.
chance. No.
See, right? Yeah. It'd be kind of rough.
You'd be disqualified, I'm afraid.
I'm pretty glad that that's not in my nonsense, but it's close.
It is close.
There's been a lot of that heavy, like moving and shaking of just
Hell
like
yeah.
reclaiming your rights as
I
like
love
an
that.
undervalued woman
Hell
in my
yeah.
ancestry, like through
Period.
marriage and naming. And yeah, luckily none of it is like, oh my God, we're in such a small town that the only option is your brother, like weird abuse crap. I don't have to face that personally. That feels good.
Yeah.
sorry if you do. Also, can I just say, I don't know. I think inbreeding that happened 300 years ago maybe just kind of like is out in the wash by now.
Here's the other thing, guys. We all evolved from weird, like, fish things, okay? We were inbred. We're all inbred. And if you're, like, somebody who believes pretty heavily in the Bible,
Right.
TM.
That's all inbreeding.
Baby.
Invented from
Mom
one.
and dad are Adam and Eve. There was only two of us. Oh, shit, motherfucker. We're all inbred.
I think arguably evangelical Christians are like maybe the biggest proponents of things like
You think they're into
inbreeding.
it?
Because of class and race preservation.
You're so right.
Often also small town, like Appalachian or Southern like communities that are most susceptible to that stuff. It is to maintain your family structure so that
Big
you
time.
can move up in class. Like that's a Christian practice. And
time.
it's also like more likely to happen in small church towns.
Well, also,
which
it's
are-
like, it's so easy to rewrite the Bible when you're the king.
Absolutely.
And also want to fuck your sister.
Interesting, King James.
Yeah, why'd you do that? Let's just talk. Okay, let's transition now. So we want to talk about conflict today.
I am interested to hear your thoughts first.
From the tap. If I could read it verbatim,
Yeah, pull
that
it
would
up.
be ideal. At the Steinbag, Lucy Steiner, every bartender I've ever met is better at de-escalating conflict than the police. Period. Via the Twitter web app.
Amen.
That is simply correct.
Yeah.
And then that got me thinking into my own personal experiences with bartenders, conflict, and the like. Every conflict that ever happens at a bar is swiftly dealt with by a bartender
Yeah.
in the most humane and effective way possible. And I think maybe the reason is cut that shit off at the head. Like if you say,
yeah.
I'm taking away the resource you want, I'm taking away the fun juice,
Yeah.
then people start acting right. Also, if I want to come back to this bar, I'm not trying to make dookie with the bartender because
The bartender has a certain kind of power and leverage then.
extreme power.
Yes. But it's a nonviolent power.
Super.
Kind of inherently. Bartenders are held to such high accountability standards. I hear in some states they're even held accountable for DUIs or
Utah.
like alcohol related incidents. If the person left their bar, they can be held liable for that in court for the effects of like not cutting them off. There's heavy
There's consequences.
incentive to nipping something in the bud, making sure that it doesn't become a larger conflict or cutting someone off.
There's only been an time in history where a bartender has not had my back in a conflict.
Okay, yes.
Right. It was a bar that I frequented. They had hired a new sound person. That sound person had gossiped about me in an excessively sexual way.
And violent.
Violently sexual way. That information got back to me via my friend.
Yeah.
The and then
off-duty bartender that night.
yeah, exactly. I acted violently to have to the information I learned.
Right.
Don't regret that, and I can't regret it, and I would do it again.
Amen. Stand up for yourself.
Yeah, I would literally never allow anyone to talk to not only me that way, but anyone ever.
Yeah.
So like I was like, oh, okay, so like we're gonna fight.
Yeah.
The bartender was like, oh my God, he's an employee here. You can't just do that. And I was like, no, see, that's where we're not gonna agree.
Yeah.
That was the only conflict that I've ever had with like somebody in a bar where I
Where
was
the
like,
bartender did
I don't
not
believe
actually
you.
resolve it very well.
Yeah, I was like, oh, well,
Well,
I guess
also-
we'll fight you too because
My problem with the off-duty bartender in this scenario is that he just relayed the information to you in
Yeah,
a way
why
where
aren't you fighting?
It wasn't an actionable plan, and he did not tell the bartender. He didn't get his
Yeah.
colleague involved in like a helpful way. He
Yeah,
didn't
that's true.
take on any kind of work-related task where he could actually help the scenario by like making you safer. Period at all. He didn't
Yeah.
do any of that.
He just told me.
Gave you the violent information, which is a night ruiner, and then did not wrangle the on-duty bartender
and
when
then was
she went off on
surprised
you.
when I was violent back, which I was like, okay.
He because I think that guy just told you about it because he wanted to seem like he was like on your side or whatever,
Totally.
but he wasn't skilled enough to be on your side, clearly.
It was
and
like-
then he also
Yeah.
like did not fundamentally understand how violent the information was.
Yeah,
Because
that's
like
true.
I think if he had really been sensitive to it, he would have handled it really differently, and he would have like also understood that it would make you react.
Right.
Right.
No one was on the same page.
No.
Like if the off the clock bartender had relayed the information
Right.
to the on the clock bartender, I believe that it would have been fixed.
Yeah.
I want to
And
believe
that's
that.
on conflict management.
That's on conflict
You
management.
know, like if we could replay the scene, like, yeah, that's.
It's like, oh,
there's
okay.
a lot of other pointers that could have been like an
Instead
actual
of telling
better.
the person who's going to have the most violent and visceral reaction,
Right.
let's tell other people to be
Yeah.
responsible
Right.
for the safety of the room,
Yeah.
what just happened. What is it going to do to tell me that?
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
It's going to piss me off and I'm going to start fighting. Okay. Having known that information, be like, hey, I think you should fuck off
Mm-hmm.
and like, don't talk to her. Don't mention you said, like, just
Right.
move on, get
Yeah.
out of here.
You say,
or
that's not acceptable to say.
that's
to
not
me
cool
or
behavior.
anyone. Yeah.
Don't say that. Or tell the bartender, hey, this person said something really gross at this person. Just keep an eye on them because I'm not sure their intention. Period. You know, the fact that you told me that, what am I supposed to do? Fight the guy,
Right.
which is what I'm going to do.
Right. It's like what your other alternative if you were a different person, obviously, would be to like leave the bar, which is a huge bummer. And it's not
I wouldn't do that.
it's not the win that people think it is, where they're like,
Right.
oh, I'm telling you so you could go. It's like, well, I don't want to go.
Yeah, oh,
I want the
my
threat
night-
to not be here.
Exactly. Oh, I get to ruin my own day because somebody said something fucked up at me.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
No.
At all.
No.
The police, however, have like completely different incentives.
Oh
and they're like just to stereotype their behaviors, the training and the action and incentives of their work lead them to react explosively and like eliminate quote unquote threat style without thinking. And we're obviously of the belief more that like managing conflict is often mediating it or like making space for conflict that needs to happen, you know, or just like keeping it safe in general. And yeah. I'm down to talk about that because it happens a lot more in our community spaces, even just freaking bars, you know, and I think people overlook it all the time because they don't want to give credit to such a stigmatized
career.
life practice career. Like people
because
don't want
technically being a bartender is an alternative lifestyle. People
Right.
don't want to give you any credit for having emotional intelligence.
absolutely.
And they are people who can have full-blown conversations
Yeah.
with anyone in a productive way that is safe. And that is a very underrated skill, but also something that is totally undermined. And you're right, the police are trained to be explosive. They are
Yeah.
extremely violent. And here's the
And then
here's
at the same
not
point,
tea, okay?
they're also not paid enough to care. You know, like they're
Right.
everything is set up to make it so that they are
Also,
not
they
going to like
don't know the
manage
law.
things.
The police
Extremely true.
fundamentally don't know the law. You cannot learn what a lawyer knows in
Right.
10 years in 6 months. You can't.
Yeah.
So the idea that we have public servants who fundamentally don't understand the rights of the citizens that they serve, and I'm
Right.
air quotes, but like
Huge air quotes.
huge air quotes, is enough to make you question the validity of the service that they're providing. A. B. They don't have the anger management. They don't have the level-headedness because that's part of training to be a lawyer is the fact that you have to be emotionally responsible and check in with yourself because it is inappropriate to talk to other counsel in a like if a police officer was in the courtroom and spoke to counsel the way that they talk to a regular citizen, they would be thrown out. If they talked to the judge, the way that they would talk to a citizen, they would be thrown out of court. It is inappropriate the way that the police often and regularly engage with the people that they are, quote unquote, protecting and serving. It's no secret. We're super ACAB here. I really don't like the police.
Welcome.
They are the last resort. Like, and I mean that in the most like bold, italicized, all caps, last resort. Like, if you need to involve the police in any of your excursions, you probably need to sit down for a second, take a deep breath, and then rethink that.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. There's so many
almost
circumstances.
No reason.
Actually, well, because I don't call the police, and I tell everyone that I'm interacting with in a situation of crisis that I don't engage with the police. And I'm totally down to give them like reasons why, because sometimes I'm talking with people that I don't know that well or whatever, you know, like this shit happens. But I don't feel safe with police. So I'm also not filing police reports for certain things that have happened to me. The whole system is corrupt to me. But anyways, I'm like, because I don't interact with them, I'm always coming up with really creative solutions on how to handle a scenario.
A conflict,
You know, like any kind of crisis, to be totally real. And usually it's just like a lot cleaner for everyone involved.
Yeah.
First of all, I work in nightlife a lot. So I wouldn't call myself a bartender necessarily, but I've done a lot of bartending, and I'm also a door person. So like that's like quite a lot of being proactive about certain kinds of conflicts, I'd say, which I'm like, all the bartenders I know are just some of the best people.
You have to be vigilant about the kinds of people. You're making mental notes of the people that you might have questions about. And then like imagine
and there's a lot of
to kick people
smoothness
out,
as well with how you handle every situation, because there's a lot of people are loosey-goosey outside, but in a way where you can even just guide them towards
better
respecting
choices.
The confines of the space, you know, just anything like that, or understanding that a boundary is a hard boundary. When I was a teenager, I worked at a daycare program in the back of like an all-women's gym, and it was a free service. So like many people could bring their kids in for just kind of like unregulated childcare, and it could be from 2 weeks old to like age 15. And I started working there when I was 15. So it was a little bit like rough and tumble, but it was also kind of cool because it's like it was a good service, you know, for like generally the whole community. And because it was loosey-goosey enough, you know, sometimes kids would be in there for a while. But one rule about the daycare was that the gym owner was just like overseeing the whole thing. She didn't really know very much about children at all. So she was like, you can't use discipline in here at all.
Oh, no.
And I know that she was probably trying to make sure that we weren't like overstepping and enforcing weird kinds of rules, because people get way too comfortable with that with children. Yeah. I'm also like pretty strict. So I was like, that means no time out. You know, like that meant that the entire time I worked there, which was for 4 years and like a huge age range, like I had to redirect children out of everything and negotiate them out of everything. And because of the
cool skill to
the kind of general public nature of the place, like kids were of all
at 15
kinds. And it was a really cool skill.
What an incredible skill to have learned.
Luckily, I was a teenager, so I was like really creative in my solutions. You know, like I could just figure things out. But also, it set me up for adults so well.
Yeah,
you know, like
and what an awesome way to learn anger management without like fucking having to deal with that. Yeah,
I mean, I had kids in there every once in a while who would do really wild shit. Like I had a kid that I was seeing since he was 3, and then when he became 5 and he went to kindergarten for the first time, he like rapidly adopted really sexist behaviors, which happens a lot naturally, actually, when people socialize.
Right.
And he walked into the room one day and threatened to punch me in the face and then called me a bitch for flinching. And it's like, I couldn't react. You know, my only move was that I was sitting in a chair and I like could stand up and be like, I don't like being spoken to that way. And I can't talk to you unless I'm like reminding you of the rules of this space for the rest of this time, because that was so not okay. Yeah. You know, like, and even just being a few feet taller than him because he was only 5 years old, like that he's like reconsidered immediately. Right. First of all, I didn't flinch. I'll say that. He just really wanted to call me a bitch.
Pussy.
But like But then the fact that I didn't react by like yelling at him or freaking out, it really just took the whole thing and made it a wash.
There is nothing more intimidating as somebody being cool, calm, collected, and not bothered. Holy shit. Like when you bucket somebody because you think they pissed you off or whatever. And
also because you're trying to flex power.
It's a power play.
As
exactly
subconscious as it might be.
Like you think you're having a reaction where you're like, oh, that made me angry. What you're actually doing is trying to reassert power over the situation because somebody made you feel small. That is literally what it is.
Right.
And like the sooner you realize that like all of your reactions are your own like body's reaction to losing some perceived power, it gets a lot easier to deal with general conflict because you're like, okay, well, power is not important here. And so then you can kind of mediate the situation. You can be like,
do I want it to be important here?
Yeah, exactly. I was a very reactionary child. I was a very conflict-oriented child because I was raised with very conflict-oriented parents. My parents were both teenagers when I was alive. So I kind of was raised with them in parallel. So they were kind of growing up and I was being raised in that weird storm that they were having, full of conflict. They couldn't figure out anything. And then Kara was my babysitter. Like she shut down conflict in the same way that you did, where it was like when I was getting frustrated by something, she was just like, let's redirect that energy. Let's go outside and run around. Or let's color a picture. Like, do you think we need to be more introspective today? Like, should we talk about it? Like, do you want to watch something? Like, she was extremely good at seeing me where I was. And instead of just engaging that conflict. And she was 16, 15 years old too. And so like sometimes when a little kid says something fucked up to you, you just snap at them. It was so rare with her that I can't think of an example like off the top, but like I know there was those moments where she had to be frustrated with me. Like it was probably so fucking annoying to deal with my little bitch ass all the time because I was constantly mad. I was a very aggressive and like angry child, but she had like this very peaceful energy and like she was able to like come down with me and be like, I don't know what's going on with you, kiddo, but like let's turn that into something else.
Accepting that this kid is like really mad, you know, and then like absorbing it and like giving them the opportunity to move on as if they hadn't been mean to me. And I feel like that offers a lot of opportunity to like actually get at whatever the anger is like covering up, because anger is sometimes is what I mean
it's a product of built up emotion.
And it can be a lot of things. It can be a product of built up emotion where it's especially when people are feeling unheard. I see that a lot where it's like, of course, I'm not going to try to breach my sadness or like my hurt or my more vulnerable parts, like the scared parts, because those don't feel safe. And so, and they don't feel heard. And so like anger is what's going to come out. And it's really like that's just one example, but it's really forgiving for people to understand that like the anger wasn't the root and to just move with whatever it is without punishing you about it. Adults don't necessarily like deserve that, but it is a lot of conflict management, because I think then if you're in like an actually hostile environment at work, like you're a bartender, you're having a customer who's acting like out of control or like acting out of some emotion that's like not totally right, and you don't have the option to fight back. Like your option is to figure out what is really affecting this person, and then to just like manage that. And then also because you're in a drinking space, whatever, in this scenario, there's like a huge layer of just like accepting and moving on. No one's there pointing out every single mistake where it's like, okay, but then you spat on the floor and then you knocked over the stool and then you also punched that guy. So we're going to make up a write-up of everything you did wrong today. It's more of just like, we're going to get you home. We're going to try to get nobody to catch charges tonight. Ideally, you're not driving, you know, like whatever it is. Or like, if you can't help but start fights in the bar, you have to go out of the bar.
Here's what I'm going to surmise, okay, is that, and it might not be part of the training, but part of the mindset of being a bartender is understanding that you are dealing with people who are adult children. And I think that
Drunk people do seem like adult children.
Right? Like, part of me wants to believe that might just be a standard practice that they all understand.
Dealing with inebriated people. So.
You're right, but so I don't know, and that's where I want a bartender audience to be like, oh no, we don't learn that in bartending school, which I don't think exists. By the way, I know that you guys get trained like on the spot, whatever, but like,
well, it's like you might have to tell a guy like way more times than you consider necessary in another circumstance, like that he's not being cool. You know, like, and the guy that you're talking to doesn't realize that he's being nasty. And then he also probably can't drink anymore, and he's just like arguing, but he thinks it's a joke. Like the thing that I've always done in that case is just like, also, I'm not going to judge you for needing to hear it 6 times, but I will tell you 6 times that I cannot give you another one, and also you can't speak to me that way.
Also, if you are under the impression for any reason that arguing is a joke, you should go fucking reevaluate that. Immediately.
I hate that playful argumentative nature. I'm a little bit too neurodivergent for that. Excluding someone from the space or having to draw that kind of official boundary with someone or like take the extra step of being like, you have to leave, is not what any owner wants. That. Nobody running an event wants that. No. Ideally, it should be the last resort. Yeah. And that means that a lot of people who are going to be good bartenders are going to be really good at not making people feel uncomfortable, but definitely still managing their behaviors. A lot of people respond a lot better to being spoken to sternly, or the kind of like smoothness, or like this is a non-conflict way that someone can shut you down. And I think that really bartenders are like connoisseurs of learning how certain kind of people are best to engage with, so that they like gain that mutual space respect.
Because have to be able to read people very well.
A bar is a great community model, like example, like a little microcosm of what we might imagine for like the general public. The kind of expectations that we can hold for people is that they could be inebriated at all times. Like, let's just be real, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And the bartender has a certain, role there. And in some ways, if we think about them in that way, they're ideal. And I think that one of those most ideal traits
not only do they
is
have
that
a role there, they have an obligation to you at some level to like make sure that you have like,
because and it's like mutual in a certain way because they're employed there. There's like all sorts of things that keep them. It's in their best interest to also like
you're so right.
Keep
when you say,
well managed.
Exactly.
So it's a pretty like self-sustaining little like community model. Not entirely, because it's still a business. Like, don't stretch my words past what they mean, but
work. Right. But don't take it out of context.
In general, I think that the skill set that I would like compare to a bar model versus like a police community model is that bartenders do often let certain things slide, or like offer certain forgiveness or a grace to certain things, just because they know it's not necessary to resolving the conflict. Like, it's not necessary to getting the behavior to stop. Even if someone's being sloppy and all they care about is their last drink, but they will not be sloppy when you're like telling them or like using any of these usual like please stop whatever, or you threaten them or anything, then you can just be like, I don't want to have to do this, but I'm going to have to cut you off if you don't stop doing that thing we talked about.
And then they get right back into regular behavior.
That might be exactly what they needed to hear. They did not need you to act like the fucking police or like
never.
Yeah, exactly.
Never.
Or to chastise them about everything that they did wrong. In my experience, anytime police have been in my vicinity, even if it was because I was in a car accident and somebody else called them to document the accident, like whatever.
They're extremely rude.
The police have still taken every opportunity to look at my vehicle, start casual conversation with me in an attempt to find something
incriminate you
that I was doing wrong. Yep. And usually they were hitting on me at the same time, and they were being extremely
it's all a tactic.
It's a very covert, really, really messy and corrupt, down dirty styles to talk to someone who did nothing wrong, who got hit by another car.
Yeah, like
and
even
a lot
if
of it
you're
was
the
weird profiling.
Even if you're the non-guilty party and dealing with the police, they are going to exercise a certain level of authority over you that is extremely alienating, but also it makes you feel very small and like you've done something wrong, even if you haven't. Even if you're the one who's been perpetrated against, When you call the police, they will ask you what you're wearing, what day of the week it was, were you drinking, what were the circumstances around you? And I, to a certain extent, can only give them that much grace where I'm saying, like, I guess for information purposes, you would want to know those certain details. But
there
a
are
lot of
definitely
those
circumstances where, like,
it's violent.
for the police in their minds, in their little systems or whatever, with how they're incentivized and what they're told their job is, where like they think that it is like necessary to ask those kinds of questions, brings across this energy of assuming everyone's guilty all the time.
It really feels like that. Like every time I've interacted with the police, even if it's in like a very like routine situation, it's like it feels like they know I did something wrong. Even if
Well, they're looking for it.
because they're looking right, exactly. It's because they're looking for something wrong that you did. It's not because you did something wrong. It's because they're looking for it. I follow the rules. I like just need everyone to know that I'm a stringent rule follower. Like,
I can back that up.
I get really stressed out when I do
is very responsible.
anything weird. Okay, so like almost every time I've been pulled over, a gun has been pulled on me. They write me a ticket. And I've had to go to court, like, to fight, like, traffic stop tickets because I did not do anything fucking wrong.
Right.
And it's just the fact that they're looking. Like, the last time I got pulled over, he was, like, looking around in my car, which is full of pill bottles because I take antidepressants and others. Hi, guys. The pill bottle's empty on the floor.
It's just normal trash.
It has the label on it, which is fully legal.
It has your name. You know,
And
like
then
nothing's being done.
He was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "It's an empty antidepressants bottle." And he was like, and then I had a mason jar full of coffee. And he was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "That is a mason jar full of coffee." And he was like, "You want me to smell that?" I was like, "You want to sniff my brown liquid?"
Like,
by all means,
go
officer.
ahead. But I also don't think you should have the right. Because you have no reason to believe that I was driving,
you're right.
Drinking.
There's no reasonable doubt. There's no reason.
Exactly.
Also, you're not allowed to search my car because I did not
fully
give
illegal.
you permission.
I know.
So
cops
you
around
even
here have searched
looking
my car
around
illegally quite a lot.
I know. They just don't care.
They'll
They're
pull
like
me over
looking
to
around
talk to me,
shit.
and then they have a buddy circling
Searching
around
the
the
car.
back. Yes.
Yeah. Here's the thing. He's like 19. Okay.
Oh my God.
He's a child, and so I'm like, by all means, please sniff the mystery brown liquid in my mason jar.
Idiot.
Fucking moron. Right. And
if this was really as big as you thought it was, that could have messed you up. One of the times that I got pulled over for absolutely no reason, and the cop was just talking to me, and he had his buddy like shining a flashlight in the back, doing their little illegal search of my Honda CRV because it's just open back there. And I had some roller skates in the back, and I think they also realized that they weren't going to be able to get me for anything, and so they started hitting on me and being like, "Any chance you do roller derby? You know, like any chance we can go see you?" And I was like, "Y'all pulled me over, and I'm also like having a panic attack. Like I can hardly breathe. I'm about to shit my pants. You're disgusting, by the way, and you have no understanding of your whole like power dynamic. And also, like I know that you cannot do that.
You're saying that
and
they
I can
don't.
see right
they
through
do.
You.
They know. That's the thing about the police is that they fucking know their power over you.
My only deal with them is like with some of them is like it's subconscious versus conscious, and I think sometimes like it's happening to them, and it's
I
not
can't
a
let them
write-off.
like
I'm not writing them off for it. It's just that sometimes I don't think that they know that it's happening, and sometimes they
like
do.
sometimes they let the mask slip, and like that is inviting, but like the police are not trying to help you, and I can't stress that enough. Like it's just generally like they don't have your best interest in mind. They are looking for a reason to incriminate you, and they will find a reason if you give them one.
Yeah. I would like to also pose a question
Let's hear
at
it.
the end of this conflict conversation. But we've also been talking about a lot of behaviors and like other community kind of positions that you can be in. Like, I would love to talk a little bit about some of this conflict stuff in just general interpersonal relationships. I'm not exactly sure what yet, but I guess, I don't know. Maybe I just want to hear a little bit from you because I feel like I handle conflict different than many people. And I'm kind of curious what you would consider like conflict good or conflict bad, or like, you know, things that you don't approve of, things that you think are helpful, whatever.
So the question is, when does it become a conflict in your interpersonalness?
Conflict good, conflict bad.
Bad
type
conflict.
deal, you know, like,
Good
yeah.
conflict. And I think that most conflict is dictated by like how you're just feeling inside, which sucks.
No, I would agree with that.
I would like it the most if I didn't have my emotions dictating how I'm really going to feel about something. But look, that's what they are. They're your feelings. So
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
can regulate them, you know,
to
obviously.
some extent.
But it depends, you know, like it takes a long time to build up a skill, and like also just certain things can like send you dysregulated and that kind of
Yep.
thing, where it's like sometimes you just need time and space and to not be like having the interpersonal interaction right then because you're
Yeah, well,
there's
okay.
no way you could bring yourself down.
So God forbid you're annoyed with a situation, okay? But then that situation, okay, so you can't escape it. You can't get rid of that thing. It's not going away, and it's a consistent reminder of the thing. All right, that's conflict in and of itself. Because you cannot escape the feeling of unease.
Okay.
Whether that is like I'm feeling sad about it, I'm feeling angry about it, I'm feeling whatever about it. Okay.
Yeah. So like the tension too.
Whatever that tension
qualifies,
is, like
yeah.
if you can't escape it
Right.
at any point, that isn't going to resolve itself.
Yeah.
That's when it's bad tension and needs addressed. Like that's bad conflict. Okay. So if you're like in a place where, and this is my head speaking only. I'm saying you're because it's me and I need. Okay. So here it is. Good conflict. Then in my head, you can be like, okay, time and space will create an understanding for this thing that will heal us both. And we can come to an understanding later. And that generally, that's the best case scenario. If you can have space from the situation and you both can come back to it in a different headspace and be like, look, I did some reflecting on that. And in retrospect, A, B, and C is what I could have done better. But the thing about, the bad conflict is it's something that you can't get rid of right now. It's something that like I actively have to engage with. And it's going to be difficult for me because I'm not given that time and space.
Because of the urgency and like the
and
need.
it will feel urgent.
Like it's like a need.
It will feel urgent because it can't be undone by time and space, right? So if it's like something where if it's something where it's like I don't have the time, space, energy, whatever, like we have to deal with this now. I can't escape it. There's no way for me to come to this conclusion on my own. I have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like that's bad conflict. Best case scenario.
Yeah.
A conflict would be something that like you've been given time with yourself and your feelings and your brain to like understand and collect information.
Like what feels conflicting, you know? And then present it.
If you can sit on that feeling for
and
a second
unpack
and just
it yourself a little.
Totally.
Yeah.
And because like 99% of the time, the conflicts that I have with people, the minute I leave the situation, like physically leave the situation, I'm like, that was like totally not okay. Well, that wasn't necessary. Here's like A and B reason I could have done this differently or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Then when you come to see that person, you're like, hey, like the last time we talked, this happened and like I wasn't loving that. And then they'll be like, well, I felt the same way.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So then, that's good conflict because it's like, good. I'm glad that we both see that and we can just move on from it.
That's one of my things is I'm like, good conflict is when you can kind of like reduce what feels bad. I don't know. Maybe I have like a bunch of different definitions, but I'm just like, I want to be able to talk about things or like talk about things that feel complicated or like conflicting. I want people to be able to come to me with those kinds of things, and because I want to be able to undo it. Or if they're having valid like hurt feelings or like a valid critique, I want to hear it so that I can stop, like no matter what, I want to like take that conflict and kind of make it less of like a pain.
Okay.
Where it's like a conflict happens, I guess, is like part of my thing. And then I'm like,
Okay.
you can handle it many ways or like have many mindsets about it. Like one of my things is like people will come into conflict and I'm upset because, like life is stressful and all of this stuff, and it is now like making me upset at my partner. They'll like go to their partner and be like, I'm upset at them because they're not doing this for me and that would make things easier and like blah 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 blah.
But there's
instead
a bigger
of like realizing that they could come together with their partner over the like common issue, where it's like the issue is like the environment, the surroundings, the way that people are speaking to each other, something like that, but if you're attacking people like they're responsible for like your feelings type deal, then I'm like, not good way of dealing with the conflict.
Well, and so
that's mine in a nutshell.
Okay,
so I'm like, we kind of align, but I was like,
so like and that's my bad conflict, right?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is the bad conflict,
right?
So like if we're in a situation where like things are compounding and snowballing to the point where it's like I don't really have
there's an event.
Yeah, well, yeah. If there's a catalyst to general stress that continues to snowball and compound, then it kind of lashing out in ways that are inappropriate or things like that.
To elaborate on that, I think speaking when you're upset, like that's what I usually regret the most. Like I'm like, if I'm speaking this just like kind of unplanned because I'm upset or I'm tired, like I really wish that I had like come up on this sooner when I had the energy, or like said something a little sooner before I was at this point.
Well, and
or like if I'm just at a breaking point, I would have rather like been ahead of my own behaviors, and I'm constantly like that's just what I choose to work on, because that's like what makes me the most upset is when I'm fucking I'm like lashing out or whatever.
Almost
earlier
always
or
that.
later. Yeah.
It's almost always that. And that's where I was going too, is because it's like the bad conflict is almost always solved by just taking a step back and seeing the bigger picture. And if that literally means just you going into a different room, like God forbid you're having a disagreement with your roommate, which is like 99% of all of the conflicts in my general life is like, oh my
share
God.
a bed with. That's my biggest, like, where I'm like, what do you do then? Because the space is hard.
Right. Like,
it genuinely, I think it's complicated for a lot of people because it's
and that's what I mean too, right?
Space.
So when I was describing that conflict where it was like, I can't escape this. This is inside of my like daily life. This is something that like I'm dealing with right now.
Or God forbid, like the person or the thing that is creating the conflict is literally
constantly
like an inescapable tyrant, or who is interested in having conflict with you. Yeah. Because that's like
common.
a huge issue is like,
that was me and my mom.
Someone's interested in it. Even if you're not interested in it, they are determined to fight with you. And if you have to share space with them,
it's exhausting.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes me 10 minutes of being by myself. But, I'm like, whatever I was thinking when I realized I needed to take space, like I know that I have shifted because I'll literally be like, what was that? Or I'll be thinking something different.
You are
and then I'm
so
like,
capable.
Oh, okay, maybe I'm closer to being able to talk to the other person reasonably.
Yes. Sometimes you just like sit on the toilet for like 45 minutes. Okay. It's because like sometimes you just need that decompression where you're like, I'm going to think through the thoughts that I had.
Yeah.
Being able to see like, okay, I can see where me saying XYZ would probably piss somebody off. Okay. Like I get that, whatever. And then it's like, well, all right. So now I've unpacked my feelings about the thing. Because you really do need that time. You really do need that time to like think through your own thoughts, because a lot of the time you will double back on them and be like, okay, I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I hadn't thought that, because
also it's because your body is dysregulated.
Yeah.
Like you're moving really, really quickly for a
while. It's not an authentic.
You're like feeling adrenaline, like maybe even cortisol, like all sorts of things, because there could be a lot happening that's feeling like threatened, or like, you're just thinking at light speed and like giving yourself whatever time it takes to change that a little bit.
And understanding your own defense mechanisms.
Yeah. And apologizing to the person, like letting them know that you made mistakes could be the best way to like reground or whatever. Yeah. Or you could realize that you don't need to tell this person anymore.
Yeah.
And you can go. You were going to bring up an example earlier that I'm interested in hearing about, just because when you were on that train of thought, it was interesting to me. I was like, oh, you're thinking about it like so much more proactively. Like it sounded like you were like getting to the part where it's like, when I'm feeling a little conflicted in my own head, you know, like to stop this from being a conflict at all. And so I was like, that sounds kind of cool. I don't know if you still want to talk about it, but.
Well, the example I was going to bring up was the episode we don't like.
Yeah.
And I was like,
we recorded an episode that we straight up don't like. We're probably going to get back into the topic.
We will revisit
as
it.
a like extended thing, but it just kept not working.
But we recorded it and then we re-recorded it. It didn't hit the second time, and there was a lot of things that just like our energy wasn't there. It just wasn't our best. And I brought that up. I was like, look, we weren't being ourselves. We weren't being funny. Like we weren't. It didn't sound fun to listen to. Like I just don't know if that's the vibe. Like, but when I brought it up to you, well, I'm willing to hear a different opinion.
Right.
So like when I brought it to you, I was like, I'm not sure how you're feeling about it. We've recorded it twice now. So God forbid you were like, no, we got to post that shit. Right. You know? So like, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. So when I brought it to you, and I use that as an example of conflict, not because it was like, and we immediately agreed, like, okay, we can both do better than that. Like, whatever, we move on, which is a testament to how we've evolved, both of us, in our own understanding conflict with each other.
Growing up.
Right. Like, but like, it just, like, the way that I framed it, it's like, I'm willing to have an adverse opinion about it, and I'm willing to hear what you need to hear and say, and blah, 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 blah. But I use that as an example of conflict, not because it was bad conflict, but because it's good conflict. That's a good conflict to me, because I can tell you honestly and directly what the issue is. You can say, there are things that I would have changed about that too. Here are the reasons. And then we both say, okay, then we can do it better next time. And we should agree to do it better next time.
Yeah. And also, frankly, when you brought it up, I had already been stewing in like my own conflicted feelings. And I just didn't think that I could really come forward and be like, I don't know if that was the best. Feeling kind of insecure over the weekend and being like, I want to do a little better. I don't really know what's like where this is coming from or whatever. And the second you were like, I didn't really like that episode, I was like, well, thank God. You know, like
literally.
Exactly. It's like Sakura just, you know, got ahead of the entire discomfort, which is awesome. I would say that's a whole bartender move, frankly, to get so far ahead that you're like, I'm seeing like discomfort. This could be a thing.
Let's just kill it before it needs to be anything more.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a sideways conversation.
Literally.
Like at all. It's just like the willingness to be like, I'm going to say this even if it could piss you off. I don't know. Just because you can't really ever know.
You really never know.
Even with your bestie.
Well,
I feel like it's like, well, just because something was a little awkward the first time doesn't mean we can't just like clarify.
And also,
because that's what I'm always trying to say. I'm like, the opportunity of going back into something that was conflict so that you can clarify it can actually like eliminate the feeling of conflict in the first place.
Yeah, because then you're like, oh, that's stupid.
People are so afraid to do it again because they're afraid of like a new conflict, maybe other reasons too. But like, I really advocate for just like communicating more in a way and like being responsible enough that you can eliminate the conflict because you can like figure out that it wasn't against each other.
If you're not addressing a conflict while it's happening in the moment, that's okay. Like take your time, do whatever you need to do. But if you don't ever address it again, that ain't good.
Festering wound.
If you pretend like a conflict didn't ever happen, you are a gaslighting piece of shit. Like you need to address, like, and that's why I don't fuck with people who like are like, oh, we didn't see eye to eye right here, but like I'm gonna move past it, whatever. It's like you're not being mature.
They don't really move past it usually. Someone who like politely thinks that it's just like wrong to discuss things that are like taboo or could be considered a conflict, because it happens really often, especially in like work spaces, like anywhere like vaguely bureaucratic. But then it comes, you know, it comes into people's personal lives, obviously, because people adopt all that stuff.
If you bring up conflict,
but if somebody's having, you know, a vague kind of like, I don't know if I agree with you on that. Like, and there's somebody in the room who is just like, now you guys, and immediately tries to shut it down. It's like those people often see themselves as a helper in that situation. They usually
Hindrance.
don't realize that that's their personal emotional reaction to not being able to tolerate the discomfort.
Yeah, you're
of
the middle
whatever's
child.
happening. But I'm like, it's so microaggressive and it's so
Yeah.
commonly white, like because it just has
Yeah.
to do with like social expectations and stigma. And yeah, people pleasing is not cute.
No.
Like, and it's not helpful
At all.
overall because
I mean,
sometimes people need
no.
to talk about stuff.
As in, especially in a like bureaucratic work environment,
Mm-hmm.
like where sometimes you just fundamentally disagree with the way that somebody has A, framed something, or B, is trying to go about something. And it is totally healthy to be like, hey, like these are my general qualms with whatever the fuck you
Yeah.
said. And that is healthy conflict. For me, a lot of that time, it's read as somebody who's combative. But that's because
combative is a good word for this specific, like,
I live in a
Brand of
feminine
shit.
branded body.
yes, exactly.
So that is not a sentiment that like I've ever had shared with a cis man.
People who are seen as women and girls, inherently people believe that they speak more than appropriate, even if they speak less than
Less.
anybody else. You
Yeah.
know, like that's all you need to
If
know.
you statistically speak less than the cis men in your environment, they will still calculate you as speaking more. And that is a general fact across the board.
It's commonly misogynist and racist that the certain things that people consider conflicts, like especially in workplace kind of power dynamics. And I think that's really important because the conflict like call can be made in order to, I don't know, criminalize people at like a small level. You know, it's like punitive. And it's also a call to be like, this must stop. And it's usually just someone responding to their own personal discomfort and being
Or
like,
boundaries being crossed.
hey,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. And it's usually just coming from a place of unconscious bias because people respond to people of color and especially dark-skinned people and women as if they are instigating conflict more often, just because the behaviors are more stigmatized for those groups.
If people are like literally like grabbing each other by the shirt collar and shaking, like, okay,
Yeah,
now
then you
it's
can
time.
intervene.
Yeah, now
Right.
it's time to stand in the middle.
If
But
people need
somebody,
a cool off, you know, like genuinely, but like,
hey, you're red in the face and you're screaming. Why don't you go take a lap and then we'll reconvene? Those are valid reasons to break up a conflict. Okay,
But if you
it's-
see two people in the break room having a conversation who are like colleagues, you don't need to step in and be like, "Hey, what's going on?"
in fact, what you
You
could
need
do
to just
is
give 'em some space.
Turn around 360 or 180. Leave. Leave the room.
Give
like
them some space.
Oh, my food is in the refrigerator. Let me
Yeah.
put that in for 15 seconds. La 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 la.
They could
and
be
then leave.
friends. That's how they talk to each other all the time. You don't know that.
You don't need to break that up.
You don't need to break that up just because you're uncomfortable. That probably means you should go.
It means you should go.
People have a right to figure shit out.
Here's the other thing is that, like, if you intervene in somebody's conflict, they're going to have to not only deal with the conflict they originally had, but then
Right.
deal with the combined conflict they both have together of you intervening in between it.
with your fucking ass.
Okay,
After
so
your
the
weird
first-
energy coming in.
Exactly. The first thing they're going to do is deal with your ass. Number two, they still have to have the original conflict. So you did not solve the original problem. Okay?
You did not circumvent anything.
You made it worse. Thank you so much. You should leave. Anyway.
We hope we've given you great stuff to chew on today.
Right.
Honestly.
I'm chewing.
We chewed, I think.
I think we chewed. I'm hoping you swallowed.
Did we
Ew,
eat?
gross.
I don't know.
Ew,
Yuck.
gross.
That
Are
felt
you-
bad.
Sorry.
I'm too old for that.
I'm so sorry.
Thanks for listening. If you have been listening, if you like this at all, please like, subscribe, follow us in general. We're really just getting rolling, but we're also really committed and we're excited to
committed.
like meet and talk to you guys. So I don't know, like engage with us. And
It'd be so fun.
yeah, we'll see you next time.
Anyway, oh yeah, thanks. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.